Hello everyone, welcome to today's Alibaba Cloud Academy. Our online public course today, the topic is Resource Access Management. This product is a very important product in whole Alibaba Cloud products portfolio because we really need this one to help our customers to better manage their cloud resources. In today's course, I'm going to give a very brief introduction and overview of RAM. What it can do, what it can help us in what kind of scenarios. And then we go back to talk about a little bit background about why we need this service. Then we introduce you three key elements in this resource. The first one is the RAM user. Then the second one is we call them the RAM role. Based on the role, you can create either a user role or a service role. So we will focus on these three kinds of typical items in RAM, and I will give you a quick demo at the end of this course. This page shows the top 12 security threats from enterprise migration to cloud. The data was given by CSA, the Cloud Security Alliance, in year 2016. You can see from the whole list, the 12 security threats. The first one is about the data leakage, and the second one is we call them the access key or password leakage, a lack of the RAM practices. So those are very important and very high rank security threats when you are running your business on the cloud. That's why today we want to introduce the RAM service from Alibaba Cloud, and it can help you to solve this kind of problem. Before we go into the RAM users, let's talk about the cloud account itself. So everyone who can have the ability to use Alibaba Cloud, the first thing you need to do is to register an Alibaba Cloud account. By using that account, you can log into your portal and see all the resources you have created, and you can have all the power and all the privilege to do the managed service management. And so Alibaba Cloud account is basically the basic unit for multi-tenant isolation on the cloud platform. And the account owner is definitely also the owner of all the cloud resources. And we usually from the Alibaba Cloud, when we do the billing and the metering for your usage or subject, we based on the Alibaba Cloud account, right? You can consider the Alibaba Cloud account and just like the operating system Linux root privilege. It has a very high level of the privilege and it can do almost everything. Because this account, the Alibaba Cloud account, is so important and so high secured, so we have to make sure it can be maintained in a very manageable level of control. So we can use this account to protect your resource from the unauthorized access. So it's your owner's responsibility to make sure the account and the password are confidentially and securely stored. And also Alibaba Cloud provides a different kind of methodology to help you to secure your account. So we also generate the access key to help you to access your resource through the API. And also you can enable the multi-factor authentication to hardening your cloud resource access. We just talked about the Alibaba Cloud account, which is the major access portal for our cloud user to manage their resource. But the reality is much more complex. We cannot just always use Alibaba Cloud account to manage stuff, because you have to sometimes to grant somebody you trust, you want him to help you to manage some resource, but you don't want him or her to have the full control of your Alibaba Cloud account, right? So here the question is coming from, if you are running a business like a company or organization, you own some cloud account, right? Some of your employee, you need him to manage or operate on some of the resource. Then the employee became one kind of the Alibaba Cloud resource user. And sometimes it's not even a person, right? Some of the application, like a mobile application, like some web client, so they want to temporarily call some of your cloud resource to get some information or write some information. So the application became another kind of the cloud resource user. Okay, mobile application, same stuff. And also even one of the cloud service like ECS. The ECS maybe want to talk to like the OSS or RDS, and the cloud service may come from your own Alibaba Cloud account, may they are coming from another Alibaba Cloud account. So all these scenarios bring us a big question, like how can we centrally manage the identities and access permissions of users for our tenants. And we mentioned before, in the cloud environment, the role management, identity management, and even the permission management is becoming more and more complex. That's why we do need a service like the resource access management in Alibaba Cloud to help our customer to solve this kind of complexity. For RAM, here this page shows the overview about what it can do and some of the highlight features. The first function the RAM can provide is, we call them the centralized user identity management. Definitely you can, in the RAM, you can define and customize some kind of the user and put them in some group to make the user management. And also RAM is compatible with the enterprise local identity system to enable the single sign-on methodology. For every user, every group you created, and you can grant them some centralized permission, which means you can just define some policy to tell which one can do what. We call them the centralized permission management. And we have the unified resource access management, which means you can use the RAM to control any user access to any cloud products. And finally, we call them the unified bill, because all the users, all the RAM users, they will share the primary account bill, and it's much easier for the enterprise to don't worry about how can you manage the finance status of your RAM user. All the financial bill will automatically accumulate into the primary account. Talking about the user identity management, there's two highlights here, because in RAM service, when you create something, you can consider always like, should I create a user or should I create a role? For RAM user, is generally speaking, it represents a physical identity. This physical identity, we usually map it to an employee or some system. It should have the independent login password, or you can create an access key for it. It can support the multi-factor authentication. And the RAM role is more like a virtual one. It's aligned with local identity, but it's a virtual identity. It cannot log in the portal independently, so it doesn't have the independent login password and AK, but it can always link to the external physical identity. It just like this picture shows, the RAM role is just like you are wearing a mask, and the mask has a different capabilities. When you're having that mask, you can do something you cannot do before, but usually when you define the RAM role, we already grant it to say who can actually wear this mask. And also talking about the permission management, there's one highlight here, we call them STS token. Sometimes there's some kind of scenario you want to grant some anonymous users to access your resource temporarily, like watching a video or read some not so critical data. You can just grant them the STS token, then they can have that kind of capability. Okay, RAM user. From this chart, the RAM user is just one logical user, and through the RAM whole functionality, the RAM will check the user's policy about what it can do and where it can go and how it can manipulate the different resource. So it reflects the RAM's core features like the centralized user management, permission management, and those kind of stuff we just talked about. Let's take one example. When we talk about the authorization capabilities, it can give the RAM user the minimum granularity and the strongest control. Let's take this scenario as an example. We want to authorize an employee to download only the private bucket data from OSS, and the operator must be in the internal network with the MFA logon authentication. For this kind of the very complex scenario description, a traditional access control list is hard to describe this kind of very complex policy. But in RAM, you can just write down some policy using the grammar, the correct grammar to describe this. Here you can see that we grant the action like the OSS get, which means you can only read, right? And the resource we specifically pointed to private bucket, a specific bucket. And also we are saying that you need to make sure MFA enabled and the IP address coming from those kind of addresses. So this is a very good example to show how can we use the RAM policy to very granular define a policy. And there are some more scenarios like you can also give the authorization to a mobile application and to other cloud service. And I said you can use the STS, those kind of temporary authentication mechanism to grant a third-party application very temporary access to your resource. But talking about the RAM, we mentioned about the RAM user, right? There's another very big highlights you need to know is we call them the RAM role. Sometimes someone calls them the shadow user. The RAM role is just a role, and I talked about before. It's just like a mask you can wear, right? It didn't change the basic of the user, but when the user is wearing the mask, it's doing what the mask can do and lost his previous nature. In the RAM role functionality, you can create two kind of the role. The first one we call them the user role. The second one we call them the service role, right? So the role is you can use some kind of assume role policy document to describe your role to specify who actually can play this role. And then you attach a policy to the role itself. We have two types, user role and a service role, right? Here is a snapshot from the user role definition page. You can see what I'm trying to circle here is we call them the assume role policy document. It described what kind of role it is, and here is a policy. When you go to policy, you can see for this role, we granted the full access to OSS service, which means when someone is playing this role, he immediately gain the permission to operate and manipulate the OSS product. We have another role called the service role. The service role is hugely and deeply combined with Alibaba Cloud service itself. And we have some kind of internal service already listed there, like the ECS or eMapReduce. Those are the internal Alibaba Cloud service. For these services, they are trying to play some role to talk with some other Alibaba Cloud resource. Here, the example is showing that we are talking about a role called the eMapReduce default role. From here, you can see it is a service role. And also the policy it was granted is that it can be using this role to access like the ECS or VPC or some other service, which the eMapReduce usually will have a demand or requirements to touch with. Okay, let's show a demo about we will create some kind of RAM user and create some of the RAM role and switch the user to the role to see the different functionality. Okay, let's say the first demo. We are going to create some RAM user and grant that RAM user some policy with very limited access to some kind of cloud resource. So you can see how we can combine the resource, combine the policy and the resource together to give the limited access to the Alibaba Cloud resource. I'm already logged into one of the Alibaba Cloud account I have, and this is a cloud account. You can just go to the here resource management, resource access management, or you can just like I do go to the left panel and click the resource access management. The first thing you want to do is maybe to go to the users to see what you have and what you want to create. So here, when you click the create user, you can just say okay, online course demo. This is the one user, right? We don't need this one. Let's just go here. It's quite simple. It's quite directly. There's an online course demo right here. But what you need to do is it cannot do anything because it's just a RAM user, and it cannot log into the portal unless you do something like here. You need to enable the console login, right? I can give him some password. Okay. Now you are enabling the console login, and sometimes you want to create access key, but if you don't have the API request, you may not do that. And also you want to give them the policy definition, and from here you can see all the previously defined policies here. And for example, we want to give him the access to ECS. You can just search and it has ECS for access. Put it here, then click OK. Now you grant this RAM user the policy to access the ECS. And also you can either create a group and add this user to the group. So what we need to do is I'm going to show you how can we use RAM user we just defined to log into the console. Here, as I just said, is we call them the online course demo, right? And if you go to the setting here, and you will see there is a RAM login user login link. You can just copy it and go to another browser. I don't want to go to the same one because they will interrupt with your major account. What's the name we have is online course demo, right? Okay, let's log on. Okay, we are in, right? And now you can see we are using this kind of user. It's a RAM user. The way we can do is we can go to the ECS. We can see everything here and see the other ECS we have. But if you go to some other service like the RDS, you will see there's no permission here. And if you go to the SLB, it's also you're not allowed to do anything here, right? Yeah, so we just verified that the RAM user we created if you grant him some specific authorization kind of policy, it can only work on that given authorized resource. Okay, now you can just sign out. Okay, this is the end for the first demo. Okay, this time let's do another demo to show how can we create a RAM user and then we switch that user to a different role. And by switching the role, you will see that what the original user can do cannot do anymore, but it can become the new role and do everything it can do granted to that specific role. Again, what we need to firstly to do is to go to the resource access management product or from the left panel. And then when we go to the users, I already have one user created for the demo. It's called the role switcher, right? It's a very obvious and direct name. We call them the role switcher because I want him to be able to have the capability to switch to the other role. So, and some other demos shows we need to open the console logon for it, right? And for the policies, here are two the policies I granted to this role. So the first one is the SLB. I just want to this user can have the capability to access SLB only. And a very important thing is you need to also grant this role as STS assume role. Otherwise, it cannot use the role switching functionality. Okay, now we can go to here, the roles, and I create one role is called the user role for RDS only. You can always create your own role from here, and from the creation process, you can see there are two kinds of roles, like the user role, service role, you can define, right? So the user role is just some other RAM user can play with, and the service role will be some cloud service to play with. So our predefined user role for RDS only is created from here, and by using our own cloud account, and then can move on and create the roles. And here I will not do the demo. So the whole demo, it will be just as I said. I will log on as this user role switcher and to check its accessibility to the SLB. Then in the portal I will switch it to the role like the user role for RDS only, and to check if it will lost its original capabilities and gain some new capabilities. Role switcher. Okay, let's go to the console. I will log in as a role switcher. Okay. Now I'm in the role like the switcher, right? I can do something. I should be able to use like the SRB, right? SRB looks normal, but for the RDS, I don't think so. Yeah, because I don't have the granted policy. And now what I need to do is I will go here and click the switch role here. You can just click your enterprise alias. We call this is my, and what's the name of that? User role for RDS only, right? Now we are switching the RAM user to a new role here, right? So it's coming from the role switcher, and now we are playing this role. Because we grant this role only the RDS access, right? It cannot access the SRB anymore, right? You don't have the permission, confirm. But for the IDS, yes, we can do what we want to do, because now you have the access for IDS granted for that role. Okay, and you can also from here to switch back, right? Switch your login role, and you are here, right? You can always switch another one if you want, but this gives you a very basic idea about how can you create a user role. You can create a RAM user and also a RAM role and give them a different permission, and you can always switch from a user to a role to gain a different capability. Okay, this is the end for the second demo.